So, there are subjective ways that you can do this. There are objective ways, I suppose, that you can do this. If you want to do objective, you're going by that SEC stats package I was giving you a little while ago. But even that's not completely objective because they haven't played the same teams, right? So you can only play who's on your schedule. So let's do this by position group. Start with offense. Quarterback. Advantage Mississippi State. It's advantage Mississippi State. Will Rogers is rewriting the record books not only at Mississippi State but in the SEC in the passing game. Does the offense lend itself to that? Yes. He's running the offense. That's the offense they're running. Will Rogers is the advantage, at least at this point in his career, over Jackson Dart. When Jackson Dart's in his third year of starting, maybe you feel differently about the answer to that question, but as of today, you go advantage Will Rogers. Running backs. I think that's pretty clearly advantage Ole Miss. I actually think Woody Marks and Dylan Johnson are both really good running backs.
They're great in this system, no question. But Ole Miss's running backs are better. I think Judkins and Evans would be just fine in Mississippi State's system.
Yeah. Receivers one I'm thinking about a little bit. So Mississippi State very defined in what they do with their receivers. Love Ra Thomas and Tulu Griffin. I've said it a million times. I'd have those guys on the field at the same time. Rufus Hardy, Jaden Wally is the first two at the Y. Caleb Ducking, Antonio Harmon is the first two at the Z. I honestly think receiver is really, really close. When you look at Ole Miss's receiving group, you're obviously starting with Jonathan Mingo. Malik Heath has had a big season. Mississippi State fans certainly have their opinions about Malik Heath. Jordan Watkins has emerged. There's not a ton of depth. Jalen Knox has never popped like Ole Miss thought he was going to. Jalen Robinson has been a non-factor because of injury this year. So if you're going depth of receiver group, I would say Mississippi State. Obviously, the numbers for the receivers are going to be up because of the offense that Mississippi State runs. But in a lot of ways, Jonathan Mingo is the great equalizer for me. I'd kind of call receiver a draw, but hey, Dad, you may disagree with that.
What I would point out about Mingo is he has 507 yards on the season, but he had 242 last week against Vanderbilt, one of the worst defenses in the country. Prior to that, he wasn't having a tremendous season. He would have been State's fifth or sixth leading receiver. So I want to see him. I don't expect him to have 250 this week, but can you string together back-to-back games? I would give receiver the edge to State just because of the depth.
I don't have a major issue with that. Mississippi State doesn't play with a tight end, and Ole Miss is down there starting tight end. So we'll just kind of set that one to the side. What about offensive line?
Call it a push.
Yeah. I think offensive line is an interesting debate. And I might call it a draw. Mississippi State's offensive line is playing really well right now. Are they going to maintain that level of play? I don't know. Ole Miss's offensive line's been really good this year. Ole Miss has had an awful time with snaps, which is one of the more basic things that has to happen on the offensive line. You got to get the ball from the center to the quarterback. Where do you fall on the offensive line in comparing the two?
If I'm getting the offensive line State's had the last 2 weeks, I would take State. But Ole Miss's offensive line, especially from a run blocking perspective, has just been really, really solid this year. So push sounds about right to me.
Okay. Let's go to the defensive side. A little bit different systems. State goes 3 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers. Ole Miss goes 4 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers. And then Ole Miss really a lot of the times plays 6 DBs, whether it's 1 linebacker or just 2 defensive linemen. I lean in the direction of Ole Miss on the defensive line. Combination of Cedric Johnson and J.J. Pegues and K.D. Hill. Tavius Robinson's played pretty well, too. I think there's some depth there with that group. I would give Ole Miss the edge on the defensive line.
It's really close. I might agree with you. I'm interested to see when we get to the Egg Bowl because Jaden Crumedy should be back by then.
Yeah, and that makes a difference
big piece
for Mississippi
State.
State. It is, because now they're what? Jordan Davis and Cameron Young and is it Charlton or has Pickering moved out a little bit?
The starting 3 would be Charlton, Young, and Pickering.
Okay, even though they've got them listed differently than that on the depth chart. Okay.
Yeah, Pickering is playing out wide.
So linebacker, Mississippi State's got 3 of them, which almost gives them an advantage there. I love Jet Johnson. I feel like every time I turn on the television, Tyrus Wheat's making a play this season. Mm-hmm. He's been really, really good. And that's not to diminish Nathaniel Watson. It's kind of playing the mic. He's been fine also. For Ole Miss at linebacker, you're talking about Austin Keys, Kari Coleman backing him up. He just hasn't been healthy since the Georgia Tech game. Troy Brown, who's banged up now, and Ashanti Sistrom. That's a really good group of 4 linebackers. I think I would give Mississippi State a slight edge at linebacker.
I would too. Buki Watson's playing well this year. State's getting Deshaun Page back this week. And in the last 2 weeks, J.P. Purvis has kind of made his appearance. He looks like a really good player.
The secondary, and I kind of go back to what we were talking about with the difference in numbers, Ole Miss tends to play, they play a lot of dime. I mean, there's a lot of 6-man looks out there. DeAndre Prince and Davison Igbinosun, who, by the way, is a true freshman starting at the corners, and Prince has been really, really good this year. Isheem Young at strong safety, A.J. Finley, veteran at free safety, Otis Reese, Tysheem Johnson. That's a good secondary for Ole Miss. I would say, Hadad, overall, the secondary advantages for Ole Miss, but I would use the same logic that I use with Jonathan Mingo kind of being the great equalizer in balancing things out. I think Emmanuel Forbes is kind of the great equalizer for Mississippi State.
State needs to get some picks from people other than Emmanuel Forbes. Jackie Matthews had one last week. Jalen Green had one early in the season. They need DeCamerion Richardson to start picking off some passes on the other side there and try to help him out. But, yes, Forbes is the equalizer.
And of course, you had the big special teams play a couple of weeks ago from DeCamerion Richardson against Texas A&M. Yeah. So, all right. So special teams.
If you take out kicker,
Ole Miss is better at kicker.
Yes.
Punter, I don't know.
State's punters have been good this year. Georgopoulos and Trafford.
Ole Miss has been fine in punting.
Yeah.
Kickoff, whatever. Kick return, I'd give the advantage to Mississippi State with Tulu Griffin and Xavion Thomas. Have they changed anything in punt return, or is it still Austin Williams?
No, it's Xavion Thomas.
Okay, so they've moved Xavion. Mississippi State is.
I don't think Austin Williams will return a punt ever again. I would be really surprised.
Ole Miss in the kick return department hasn't done a lot. Dayton Wade's been okay. Jordan Watkins has been okay in punt return. In the return game, I would give Mississippi State the advantage.
Okay. I mean, we didn't.
Well, what does all of that add up to?
Close.
It's really close.
It's close. I'll be surprised tomorrow if we ask Bruce that question, if he says anything more than 2 or 3 points. Either way.
Dale from the Delta says, honestly, if you take out extra points, State wins special teams running away. But you can't do that.
But you can't take out extra points. You can't. The field goal kicking is the most important part, I would say, of special teams. That's where you actually put points on the board. And in this game, we're talking about a 2-point game. That's key.
David Ripley says, ready for the Egg Bowl. To heck with intangibles. Let's go.
I stay ready.